And a very good evening to everyone. It's Friday. Very good night to some of you. Very good afternoon to some of you. Whether it's night or evening or afternoon, it's Friday. And as we say in our part of the world, thank God it's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We're back again for another Friday edition of Politics 101. Tonight we are going to be talking a little bit about the budget. As you know, Budget Day in Guyana is on Monday. It's on Monday. And the PPP government will be presenting its 2021, 2022, its fourth budget, and some will argue its fifth budget because when it came in, it presented what it called an emergency budget, but its fourth substantive budget on Monday. So it's budget day on Monday. And what we're going to be doing tonight is that we're going to be talking about budget expectations. We have a representative from Labour, the trade union movement. Our own Lincoln Lewis is going to be with us. We have a representative from the AFC, our usual Friday guest, Dr. Vincent Adams. He's going to be with us. And Elson Lowe from the PNC, young economist, economic advisor to the leader of the opposition. He's going to be here. And we are going to be talking budget. We're going to be talking about what they expect that the PPP would put in its budget and what they would like to see in the budget. So welcome. Please share the link and let everyone know that we are here and we are ready to go. It's Friday. It's Friday night. And, it's the last working day for those who we used to call civil servants. Civil servants work for 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. And I know when I was a small boy, they had some people used to work on Saturday. And I think those were private sector people used to work half day on Saturday. I'll find out from my elders when they come on. But welcome to Politics 101. Thank you very much, June, Gilbert, Cyril, Adams, Everett Leonard, June Chase. The Junes are out very early in January. Sandra and Uvo, welcome to Politics 101. Wonderful people of Berbice. I would like to say a special welcome to you all. And I know the people in quarantine like to make that differentiation. So those of you from the quarantine, welcome to Politics 101. You Amsterdam people, welcome to Politics 101. And we usually forget the people down the river, down the east bank of Berbice and the west bank of Berbice. And we usually forget the Kanji people. And since we have a youngster who's playing with the West Indies now, young Shemar Joseph from Baracara. And since Baracara is in the limelight, we have to concentrate a little bit more on the people on the Kanji River, Kanji Creek. Of course, Shimron admires from Kanji area there. But Baracara is down the river. You can only get there by boat. And I remember, as I said, when we do Kwekwe, it used to be Bartiko man Bobby Lang Lakalang Dam, so long that me want for sokam. And then you're Barakaro man Bobby Lang Lakalang Dam. And so, there was something special about women from those places. And it took us a long time to realize that Baracara wasn't Essequibo. Baracara was out there down the Kanji River. To all the people who are joining us from Kanji River, Welcome, Country Creek people. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening, Sandra. Good evening, Thomas Robertson, joining us from Georgia. Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. Atlanta, Georgia. Everett, of course, Palm Halls. Name familiar to us. Debbie Collins, welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to the wonderful people of Linden. Mackenzie, we have to make that differentiation because you see, Dr. Adams usually views me out and say, I don't talk about the various parts of Linden. So you get the Mackenzie, and then you get Wismar, and then you get the different parts of Wismar, all the alleys and so on. Welcome to the people of Linden. We spent a lot of time this week. We had Apostle London here talking about Linden. We may touch a little bit on Linden tonight again, but Linden is also a special place. We'll have to contend because tonight we got two money because Lincoln Lewis is a Linden man. Although he's a smart chap, you know. He doesn't know when to own Bobby's, and he doesn't know when to own Linden. Welcome, Lynette Greenwood, my countrywoman. Welcome, Annandale people. Wonderful people. Annandale next door to Buxton, and of course South Annandale is where African Guyanese in the main live, and Indian Guyanese tend to live mostly in North Annandale. Lynette, good evening to you. Good evening to all of you. Let's see here. We have Esther is here. Good evening. We have the Bookers. All the Bookers are out in their numbers here tonight. Please share the link. We're going to be talking about the budget tonight. We have Lincoln Lewis, we have Dr. Vincent Adams, and we have Elson Lowe, who is going to join us. We have lots to talk about. You know, the PPP has been going around and showcasing a lot of these projects and owning the projects when we are finding out that the projects really weren't initiated by them. We're going to be talking about some of that. We'll be talking about what do we expect in that budget. I just did an interview today with a journalist from the BBC, and you know, foreign journalists, they ask, what are the positives since oil, and what are the negatives since oil, you know? You know, the positive since oil is that Guyana has found oil. Guyana has found oil. We have a GDP to knock dog, you know? GDP to cry for. You know, 65% growth rate. The GDP per capita is about $30,000 US dollars. So as we stand now, each Guyanese should be earning 30,000 US dollars given the growth rate that we have. So we can't deny that is true. That is true. We're moving from the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere to the highest growth rate in the hemisphere. You can't deny that. Something is happening in Guyana. We have a government that has more money now to spend. More money now to spend than any other government in our post-colonial history. That's changed. That's change. It is better that change is translated into changes and transformation in the lives of the people of the country. And so, that's what I was trying to explain to the BBC man, and the government, as too distributive mechanism that it used to distribute that money. Heavy spending on infrastructure, which means you have to have contractors to build these things. And that's where it's funneling the money to the elites of one group. And then these cash handouts, it's handing out to the working people. But the bulk of the handouts go to one section of the working people. Other than that, there's not a policy by the PPP in terms of distribution. So objectively, the country has changed because we are now a petro state. But whether that amounts to a change in the material circumstances of the people is weird. And this is where the government comes in. This is where the government comes in. And you have to have, if you have a change in fortune, then you have to have a change in trajectory, a change of vision. Where do you want to take the country? What would you like to see the country look like in 20 years? The way the PPP is going is infrastructure. Oh, people say, you build road, but we can't eat road. We can't eat road. And if the infrastructure is part of a larger vision, then you're going to see other things that go along with the infrastructure. Because the infrastructure has to serve a purpose. There has to be a demand for infrastructure. That infrastructure has to lead to increased productivity. That infrastructure has to be translated into raising the quality of life of the people. See? And this is where vision comes in. And we have to say the only vision of the PPP is that it wants to maintain itself in power. I listen, Jack Dio, I don't really watch that chap for too long, but I realized I'm missing out a lot. So last night I made sure that I looked at his press conference from beginning to end. And the man was in his element. The man was in his element. Yeah. He said that all the coalition did was studies, feasibility study on the bridge, feasibility study on this. They never implemented anything. The PPP implements. So the man is poo-pooing feasibility studies. Part of it is that the coalition did the feasibility study, and all the PPP did when they come in is to put on the finishing touches, do the work. That's one, so he can talk, he can poo-poo feasibility study. But the other thing, it shows the mindset of these guys. They're not interested in doing things the proper way. Before the doctor give you medicine, the doctor got make sure they run tests and determine what's wrong with you before they give you the medicine. Well, Jack, do you and them believe in give you medicine without figuring out what's wrong with you? That's what we are dealing with, brothers and sisters. Bad shape. And he was talking about the shadow cabinet and the shake-up, and the man said the opposition will be shadowing for a long time. You see, I am a whole political man. I don't take them kind of thing lightly. I think as it stands now, the PPP know how many seats it got in the bag. because it know where its traditional votes coming from. And it know that when it add up them seats, it then giving them a winning total. So they got to figure out where to thief the others from. And when he said the opposition going to be shadowing for a long time, I would respond and say, perhaps they think they can thief votes for a long time. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. Our ever-present Miranda Brown. Miranda is PPP, and she makes the argument, or he. We don't know whether it's a he or she, but the person makes the argument. And I don't mind Miranda. She don't cuss up. She don't carry on like them cabas who just come and lift up the dress and roll up the shot. Because man does cuss too. Man and get frackful, they could lift up, but they just lift up the shot and cuss out and abuse out. She don't do that. Miranda don't do that. Miranda makes the argument in arguments in the mold of the old PPP, the jargon PPP, you know. But them this way you get in now. Old people say, "Me no know what. Me no know what this." Good evening. I think we're all ready. We have a big cast tonight. A big cast. My friend Kwesi Ojinga, former actor, director, theater man. He's now a pastor. If you're listening, Kwesi, good evening. When Kwesi, would do plays, he say like big cast. Kwesi playing them just get 20 and 30 characters. But we have a big cast tonight. We have a big cast. Our in-house Friday man, Dr. Vincent Adams is with us. And then we have two friends, Lincoln Lewis and Elson Lowe. Let me bring them in. Dr. Adams seemed to be having some issues here. Let's see. Elson Lowe is here. Good evening, Elson.
Good night, good night.
Good night. And Lincoln, good night, good evening.
Thanks for inviting me. I thought you forgot that I exist.
You never forget a trade unionist at budget time. You never do that. I saw a news clip with you today, putting out your wish list. And a trade unionist list is more than a wish list, things that you would like to see in the budget, and we're going to get to talk about that. Let's see if Dr. Adams is ready. He's not sorted out yet. He sorted himself out. But let's start the conversation, gentlemen. Budget is Monday, and budget, of course, is perhaps the most important day, other than election day, in the political calendar. Of course, budget is about the money you expect coming in and how you expect to spend that money. Those of us who grew up with our mothers, and even if we didn't grow up with our mothers, we would see mothers always do budget. There's no budget every week. Friday is budget day for them because they got to go and shop Friday night. You got to waiting for, in the old days, they used to wait for the husband to come home with the money. Now, women are in the workforce. They ain't got to wait. They get to draw the paycheck. And Friday night is budget day, budget night, or Saturday. So those of us who grew up with mothers and pay keen attention, mothers and grandmother and auntie, we know what budgets are. I think Dr. Adams. Good evening, Dr. Adams.
Hey, I don't know what's good evening. I don't know. I'm always technically challenged here in these modern day things. In my days, our computer used to be a big building, take up an entire.
Well, welcome, and we have another Linden man here tonight. So, but this is a Linden man. He does be convenient. When
Yep.
there's sometimes he claim Bobbies, and sometimes he just
He's
claim.
transplanted in, and a lot of Bobitians did transplanted in them people, not real Indian people.
Gentlemen, let's talk here. When you hear budget, what runs through your mind? What runs through your mind? I'll start with you, Elson, and then I'll go to Lincoln and then Vincent. What goes through your mind when you hear budget day coming?
Well, as we often say, government's budget is a great way for a government to show what its priorities are. And as a result, we've seen a couple of budgets, several budgets from the PUP that have given Guyanese an idea of what their priorities are. And so again, on Monday, we'll see what it is the PUP thinks there should be a focus on. I would say, however, that a lot of Guyanese have, over the past few years, gotten the message that the PUP may have many priorities, but Guyanese are not a priority of the PUP.
Oh, wow.
And so I anticipate seeing a budget that makes that clear once again, and we can go into the many ways that they've demonstrated that. But the one that I enjoy the most is that last year they put aside $5 billion for cost of living mitigation, direct cost of living mitigation. And they couldn't themselves figure out what to do with the money until the last month of the year when they belatedly gave out a quick cash grant. So, you had high prices all year long, and they themselves did not spend the money that they had set aside to deal with the cost of living. Now, if that doesn't indicate that their priorities is not the average Guyanese, I don't know what would.
And I'm glad you went there, Elson, because I'm going to come back to that. Because look, we have to be fair to people. I think the high prices that we are seeing all over the world. It's not just in Guyana. All over the world, you're seeing rise in prices, and it's not the PPP that necessarily caused the high prices, but the question is what the PPP has been doing to mitigate the high prices. And that is our take on this thing, because if our view is that if you say the PPP caused the high prices, then you walk straight into their alley, because they're going to then argue that they didn't cause the high prices. But when you get down to what have they been doing to mitigate the high prices, that's where you catch them stumbling. But we'll come back to that. Lincoln Lewis, as a trade unionist, when you hear budget day, what are you thinking about?
I used to be thinking that the philosophy behind the preparation and delivering of a budget is been seen, in fact, as the economic and planning for the nation centered around the position of satisfying the people. In this country here, the philosophy is about big projects, talking about big budget, how much money they have to spend, and directing the funds of the country to the ministers and their friends, associates, and what have you. I am scared about budget now, because I'm sure about one thing, that it's now become a program where the politician, the government, ministers, and team direct the funds of the people, or transfer the state property to a selected group. I'm afraid of it. Budget, the philosophy behind a budget has been lost. It's no longer about development in the interest of people. It is now about primarily about transferring the resources of the state to the friends, associates, and so forth, and supporters of the party, a specific group, an elite group in this society. What I want to tell you is that I am seeing this as an opportunity. Tomorrow, Monday, when they finish, it's time for thieving out the coffers of the state. I have no apology about this. That's where we go. You don't expect to see anything big for the citizenry in this country. Don't expect to see anything that center around moving the people out of poverty. You don't have a program like that. It is transferring of money to friends, is to move and take up the state lands at Enmore and so forth, transfer the 150 and 100-acre plots to their friends. That's what will happen. They're going to tell you about new roads. They're going to tell you about new bridge. And that's what will happen. If you travel along the East Coast and the backlands, you will see what is taking place there. I am sure that as a month of I'm sure what I'm saying is equivalent to a month of Sundays. That is what happened. They'll throw trinkets at us. Mm-hmm. And the supporters and some of us are going to be fooled by it. Many of us who sit in our offices like armchair generals don't know what is happening at the back there. Go down, David, when you come to this country, I'm going to carry you at the back where you see what's taking place. Transferring. Then they're going to tell you that is development. They're going to tell you about how much hotels they're going to build and how many visitors they expect coming to this country. They're going to tell you what island gas is going to say, our island gas going to transform this country. But the gas to shore project, right, that they're talking about, and then carry it to the National Assembly, but they start to pull out money from the consolidated fund to work on those projects.
And of course, they were supposed to have a loan for that.
Yeah, these people need to be jailed. These people need to be jailed. These people don't care.
All right.
We have to be serious.
Yeah.
All of us all of how much budget. This is the biggest budget we have had. Well, here's something. While the budget is bigger, when you go to the market, when the housewives and house husbands go to the markets, the budget is bigger, but the baskets to carry on the goods getting smaller. We have to discuss these things. Mm-hmm. This is the reality.
Dr. Adams, let me bring you in here. What's your take when you hear budget day in Guyana? What's going through your mind?
Well, it changed from time to time. Of course, we're in different times here. I agree with both of my colleagues, Elson and Lincoln. You look, it's about priorities. I used to develop budgets also for my former job up here. So, but you do it in the interest of the people, because there was accountability. There's no accountability in Guyana, so that's the big difference. We're not dealing with something here that is normal. But the one thing, you don't have to go far to understand what this budget is like. And I looked at the vice president, the entire press conference yesterday. Here's how he summarized this budget. He said on Monday, I'm not going to take away from what the president and the minister is going to be talking, but let me tell you, he said, I want to assure you that on Monday, we will continue, listen to the words, we will continue to support the same progressive annual accumulation of, listen to this, of wealth and welfare to the citizens of the country. Now, listen to those words, wealth and welfare. It's the same divide, that's where the money is being distributed to the rich friends. And of course, welfare, we know what welfare means in terms of the code word. It's a derogatory word for the people who we've got to give handouts. You use the word handout, but he's saying this here is for those who are looking out for handouts. Again, he says for the wealth and welfare. But here's the other part. He goes on to say that in terms of the overcosting of projects, the wasting of budget money, he's preparing us. This here was a key part of his press conference that folks, I think it went by a whole lot of people, maybe because of my project management background. He says delays in projects are inevitable and you better live with it.
Yes.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
It's the
I heard
most
him.
responsible statement. Here, I would have been fired from my job here, or anybody make that statement. You would have lost your job or your political position when you make a statement like that. So they're out of excuse now from delaying projects. The other thing that came out yesterday, he is now blaming AppNew for the fiasco of the Skeleton project. He blamed Jumbie for the cemetery road that is being delayed. You remember when the minister got up in parliament and said that because of the Jumbie, they chased away the workers, so that's why it's being delayed. So now they're running out of excuses. So now he's gonna admit, listen, you know what? We basically ain't got no more excuses. So you better live with it. So we're gonna come back to you for more money to finish the project. So he's preparing us. A lot of it is going to be, we know it already because that's what we've been seeing. So they're not making excuses anymore. So what he's telling us, expect that this is not a real budget. We're going to come back because we're going to have a lot of wastage. So that's what I am expecting. That's not what I like. Of course, we've got a list of things. I was on another show this morning with the FT press conference where we listed a lot of things that we would like to see. But that's what I'm most afraid of in this budget, based on his own words, the own words of the vice president. That's my fear.
Yes, and he was doing that in the context of pouring cold water on feasibility studies.
Oh gosh, that
he is talking about feasibility study in the most negative way, saying that the coalition was guilty of doing studies and feasibility, and the PPP doesn't do studies; they do things.
But here's a basic. But that's again getting back to the list. He needs to go back to school because the fundamentals of any building, any project, you have to do a study. It's about planning. And he lambasted the opposition for wanting to do plan. If you do not plan your project from start to finish in terms of a schedule, you plan it in such a way that it's going to come in on schedule and it's going to come in within cost. Those are the two pillars of any project. And he's saying, oh, don't worry with it. You don't need a plan. It's the same thing. I mean, we don't have to go too far. Look at the gas to shore project. They went against the legal requirement, the requirement in that same contract with Exxon that they said that contract has sanctity. The contract says thou shalt have a feasibility study for the use of any gas coming out of that project. It's in Article 12, I think, 12 point something. They went ahead and he woke up one morning, he said, this is a no-brainer. You remember the no-brainer talk? And
Yes.
without any plan, and when his feasibility stuff was brought to him, he said, well, he started cussing down everybody. That project, first of all, should never have been. There were 10 studies that were done. It should not have been in that area there. It's Oh, did I lose?
No, no, you're here. You're here.
Oh, what the heck did I do?
We are hearing you clearly.
Okay,
Don't do
good.
anything before you knock yourself
All
off.
right, good. Yes. So the coalition, and this is the coalition did several studies, not feasibility studies, to determine where is the best place to put that project. And Patterson, who was in charge of it, it was supposed to go around the Mahaika area. I can't remember the name of the place, but that was where the best place in terms of economics, um, environmental, and everything else. But he does decided by the whims and fancies because that's their region, region three, to put it in the middle of the most populated area without doing environmental studies, without doing any kind of feasibility study. That's what we're dealing with. So when he talks about plan, we know that they're not planning anything. They're not even doing environmental impact assessments for major projects that they're supposed to be doing. So when he talks about plan, that's another irresponsible and dangerous statement that the leader of this country is making.
Elson, let us talk about this issue because it's worth talking about. It's a very important issue, and this has to do with the prices. And I'm not going into inflation because I don't want to confuse the story, right? Because people sometimes conflate prices and inflation, which is, in economic terms, a mistake. So we don't want to get. Let's talk about the high prices. The thesis that I am advancing, and that is that the market determine prices, right? Um, but a government can exacerbate that situation. Am I on the right track?
Yes, sure, keep going.
All right. So no, I come into you. I story done there, right? To speak to the question of high prices in the market and the role of government in a situation where the prices far on the market far outstrip the income that people are bringing in. What is the role of the government in such a scenario?
Absolutely. I just want to touch on a couple points Dr. Adams would have made there as well, though. Just moving that pipeline from the recommended site, which is Clonbrook, to the Wales site, that has essentially increased the cost by in excess of 100 million US. Just moving it from the ideal site to that other site. So that means that every Guyanese household is paying an extra $100,000 just because they moved that site. That's something that we brought up with the IMF when it came to the question of feasibility studies and following these studies. The IMF has also indicated that for every dollar spent, we lose 41 cents due to not doing studies, not properly following studies, not managing projects. In the Caribbean, they lose 30 cents for every dollar, but we're losing 41 cents. I don't know how it is that we can accept performing worse than Trinidad and Jamaica and Antigua and so on. But that's what happens, I think, when you have somebody at the top there who believes that studies, you don't need to do studies, follow studies, or you need to. I mean, that's how this thing happens. Now, that is $100,000 that could be in the pockets of every single household to help them to deal with these high prices, as an example. And so there's a direct cost to the average Guyanese when you have mismanagement. And that cost, each and every one of you looking here, is $100,000 out of your pocket for no reason other than foolishness. And that is what we're seeing from the PVP broadly. The next thing that we must note is that yes, you can have a large budget, but it depends on how you spend, because you can, of course, cause prices to rise and to remain high. At this point, I'd like to point out to your viewers, last year the government spent in excess of $900 billion. In excess of $900 billion. That is equivalent to 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014's budgets combined, or almost the same amount as that, in 1 year. And yet, Guyanese are under the cush, are facing high prices, are struggling to make ends meet. That's, to me, again, just an indictment of the quality of governance. Now, of course, what you could do is you could put a substantial share of your government budget towards direct efforts to lower prices to ensure that people are able to live comfortably in the country. Instead, in Guyana, we saw prices go up. The US inflation rate was 3.4% or so, but according to US State Department, inflation in Guyana was 6.6%. So nearly twice what it was in the US. Now, to me, that is as a result of a very large budget that is not spent in such a way as to help to lower these prices, to cushion the effects that you're seeing all over the world, but to cushion those effects. And we would also want to point out to viewers that when the oil price is high, which is one of the major causes of inflation, you will also, as an oil producer, get more revenue. So you have more space to bring down those price levels and to help the average Guyanese through the period. Just because there is inflation somewhere in the world doesn't mean there needs to be inflation in Guyana. Just because prices are high across the world doesn't mean prices have to be high in Guyana. That is due to the quality of your governance. And so, again, I want to reiterate in 1 year, they spent 5 years worth of budgets. And are Guyanese better off? Are they living comfortably? That to me gives some perspective as to the scale of poor governance that we're seeing.
Lincoln,
Hey, Doc,
let's,
before we could I just ask
yes,
Elson,
yeah.
just to follow up on Elson, since Elson is our economist, of course. So, but here is what I don't understand, Elson, in terms of, and I agree with Dr. Hines that the market drive prices. We all believe in that. However, we've got two different. When we talk about inflation, to me, there are two types of inflation or two elements. There's no reason, and the first thing you look at, it's cost of the cost of product. You got supply, demand, of course, the cost of the product. I could understand the importation type goods, very importing goods. There's a big supply chain. For example, now we see when our prices go up, something coming through the Red Sea, for example, where insurance has gone up for shipping, they've got to reroute. But you cannot, nobody could convince me as to why prices, a little piece of pumpkin that is grown in our backyard, has to be, the inflation is like 6 times. Tomato, couple boro. There is no supply chain issues. I mean, even gas prices have not gone up to bring it to market. That is the issue. And why I say that, the government has a role there, and in the budget, I hope that we're going to see enough money in there to spur agricultural vote to the small farmers, so that you can incentivize them to make more money, but at the same time increase supply. And if you increase supply with the same kind of demand, prices will go down. I don't know.
I just want to just make a quick note on that. We can't underrate the cost of transportation and what an oil price this high, which is not typical, right? We've talked about $50 long-term oil price. We're much far above that. Now, when it comes to the transportation of goods, one of the reasons we've said canter operators and other people bringing goods from farm to market should receive vouchers that will allow them to receive gasoline at a lower price, so the government would absorb some of that price, is that is a direct way to bring down the price of goods at the market. And you could use the windfall you got from the higher oil price. I mean, we pointed out they made $60 billion they didn't even expect to make due to the war in Ukraine. You could easily have used that to target food products by targeting the price of gasoline that is used to transport the food products. Those are the types of things where you can directly influence the market in such a way that you can benefit consumers. But if you're a government that can't even figure out what to do with money that you yourself set aside until the very last month of the year, then it is clear that one, you have no real sense of what to do, and two, it really isn't high on your list of priorities.
Lincoln, I'm going to bring you in, but let me stay with Elson for a minute, because I know that you all have made observation about where the government is spending on agriculture, and that there are some regions where they spend on agriculture, and that there are other regions where they don't pay attention to agriculture, and you find that the prices in the market in those regions are higher than in the regions that they produce the food. Would you mind speaking to that, Elson?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing is a lot of the interior regions of this country don't produce much agriculture themselves. And so, of course, goods have to be transported into those regions. And those people who live in the region will tell you that, a loaf of bread is far more expensive because of the transportation costs and the difficulties associated with that in the interior than it is on the coast. Now, of course, you gasoline prices are much higher in the interior than on the coast. That is all a fact of it. What we're saying is one thing that you could do is you provide those who are transporting these goods vouchers so they can access lower prices, but lower gasoline prices. But second, you develop agriculture in a lot of these regions wherever possible, such that you don't have to move goods between regions and therefore bear the brunt of the higher prices. Now, of course, some different agricultural produce will not grow in some regions. You'll have to look at that. But if you develop agriculture across Guyana, and Guyana has a long history of being a fertile country, you can cut prices as well. But if the government isn't thinking maybe in terms of where the support base is and so on, rather than thinking about how they can effectively deal with these issues, that's the kind of problem you're going to have. Now, the reason that I again want to point out that last year you spent as much as 5 years worth of budgets is there's no excuse for not being able to deal with the issue. Other countries have been able to deal with it. The US has a far lower inflation rate than Guyana. Clearly, somebody can do something, right? President Biden has made deliberate efforts, such as making use of their strategic petroleum reserve and so on, to lower the price of oil and to manage that. Now, what I'm getting at is if the government has the fiscal space and is still not able to deal with the high prices, is still not able to slow the rate at which prices are increasing, then clearly they don't know what they're doing. It's not to say they don't have resources, it's to say that they're not using resources well. And so when it comes to developing agriculture in those interior regions, you could easily see substantial allocations to the regions for agricultural institutes, for agricultural officers, for the opening up of lands and so on, to help to encourage agriculture. But is that the way the government is thinking? No. And so as a result, you've got inflation in Guyana twice the rate of the United States.
Elson Lowe, Lincoln Lewis, and Vincent
Before
Adams.
one quick one
Yes,
second.
yes,
Elson,
go
by
ahead.
the way, the vice president, and I mentioned it on last week, Dr. Heinz show. Why aren't you people like yourself going after the vice president when he is claiming, he said it again this last week here, claiming that the inflation rate in Guyana, he was defending the 6.5% increase. He said the inflation rate in Guyana is 1.9%
Well,
compared to the rest of the world, which is, I think he said 6 point something percent. Those are the kind of things that we need to call him out on, people like yourself, and because I mean that's a blatant, it's either ignorance or just a blatant lie.
well, I'll say two things. One is we have spoken about the U.S. The inflation rate the U.S. has put out. The U.S. State Department has said 6.6%. But second, I find it to be quite entertaining that the vice president doesn't think that Chinese who are eating food every day, shopping in these markets, don't know that the prices have skyrocketed. So for him to come out and boldly say 1.9%, which would raise the eyebrows of even the smallest child, to me is sad. Is very sad. So we will continue to put out estimates from what we believe to be robust sources, and we will also highlight, which we've done from time to time. I think Mr. Lewis is having a little trouble there. We've from time to time also highlighted that the Bureau of Statistics has not been putting out, and the government more broadly, a lot of the data that we'd like to see. The Guyana Labor Force Survey has not been published for some time. And as a result, you're not seeing the usual employment data and so on, youth employment data that you would normally see. Now, I pointed out to a friend of mine the other day, even China and so on, where people doubt statistics, they put out data. So you mean to tell me that Guyana is in such a state that the government is hiding this data? If they're so proud of their progress they've made, why are they hiding data? And to me, the fact that he can boldly say, 1.9% inflation, knowing that everyone will say, what? To me, it just gives you a sense of the way that they're thinking.
In case you're just joining us, this is Politics 101 tonight. We have some friends. Usually it's myself and Dr. Adams there on Friday nights. But tonight we have Lincoln Lewis, trade unionist and activist. And we have Elson Lowe, economist and advisor to the leader of the opposition. We'd like to welcome all of you who have joined us tonight. And we are having our program tonight against the backdrop of the budget, which is going to be read in Parliament, in the National Assembly on Monday. I often do ask the question, why do we continue to read budget? Go there and get that chap stand up there for 2-3 hours, read a long thing. Why couldn't they just table the budget? The minister gets up and he summarizes the budget and we get on with the debate and the examination and things. We waste time with that. Nobody remembers what he says when he finished that. But that's my thing. Lincoln, we know we have left you out of the conversation for a little, but we're going to bring you in here now because this question of high prices is one that the workers of this country have had to withstand for a very long time. And there's no better people to talk about prices in context of wages than workers themselves. So I would like you to address the question of high prices on the market and how this is impacting the labor force.
Let me tell you something, David. Comrades, in fact. Let me lay you know this. That there are times I believe that we are pursuing some issues in futile to pursue them. Because this government is locked in a part that they don't care a hell about who die or who live, so long they and the courts live, make money on the back. Let me just take you back a bit. We started this program where we started to talk about, in Vincent case, he raised the issue about what Mr. Jack Deere has been saying at his press conference. And he has said, my understanding is that he said the issue of doing studies and what have you is not important, is that the coalition has spent much time doing feasibility studies and they have been doing things. Yes, they've been doing things. But you know what is the problem? I want to tell you what is the problem. The problem is the coalition, the APNU and the AFC sitting down inside there in Parliament with these guys listening to this nonsense. They have to get out on the road, get in the streets and do things. We are dealing with a generation that don't know a lot of things. I want to remind you guys. Remember the charity market, the wharf. Remember the charity story? Yes. Go out there and stand up at the charity stele wharf and look out there and see what took it out. See those logs there. Those piles, in fact, that are there is a whole market. The sea carrier where if they had done a study, that would not have happened. Nobody reminds this guy about these things. Maybe the man's strength is about line. And nobody wants to tell him. You want to sit like ladies and gentlemen in the Parliament and say that we are going to debate. You don't debate people like that. You use other means to bring them to their knees. This government has no regard for those things. Look, the money that the policeman take and invest in Skeldon was bigger than the national budget for that year. What happened with it? The plant has never worked at its optimum at any time. These are things we must remind these guys about. You know, let me just tell you how these guys waste me. And I'm mad with both governments on it. Look, we have the Demerara Bridge. We're building a bridge parallel to that in the same vicinity. The plan was to bring it further down. What are you going to put a bridge there for? I hear you before. I heard you guys. Why they could not have carried that bridge further up the Demerara River, right? And you would have opened new lands on the West Bank. You could have, which would have, what we call, build new schemes, build new farming areas, better farm to market roads. You would have had, you come over the next side, who got further up, there's a bridge that they can come over. You're talking about building road to the airport, from East Coast to the airport. You could have, that same road could have been used for those people who live there and come to town. We're not thinking, we lack vision. All that we're saying is mega projects and major projects taking millions of dollars in a rich country, and what we continue to have is a group of poor people. The majority of us are poor. And election time, we're going to tell you, I want to tell you, I hope the AFC people listening, them and the APN, are they placed in that parliament? You know what you're doing? Let me tell you what you do. I'm going to sit down here. I'm going to say a debate. You're going to debate after the man read the budget. And when you're done debate, you're going to ask for changes. You're not going to get it one iota. And at the end of it, when they're ready to vote, somebody you're going to say, we're going to walk out there. What are you walking out for then? You have tacitly, you have given, you have supported your presence there. Give credence to what they're doing when their vote done. And you cry foul, you know what they will do? They go, wherever you go, they will say that we debated it, they had a chance, and we voted, and that's what the results are. I don't understand what politicians we are. I want to tell you this, buddy. This cost of living, as I walk around this country, everybody who I meet telling me about this thing. I listened to Elson a little while ago talking about the whole question about local products. How the interior is impacting on the interior. In 1999, in the same boardroom that I'm sitting in, the TUC came up with a proposal, and we were talking about the frontiers, that the products have to come from over the borders. Brazil, Venezuela, Suriname. And you know what we said? We've recommended to this government that work with the communities, wean them off of the dependency, work with them that they can develop their own product in their own community, in every community. What we meant at that time is that if you want to do agriculture and the people need a tractor to do agriculture, wherever the mission or the community is, help them to do that. Help them to get, let us put mechanisms in place that we can get fuel to them. The only thing that the government will respond to is people in the streets and people and the parliamentarians out of parliament. The people in the streets and parliamentarians out of the parliament. As long as you do that, as long as you continue to make life comfortable for them, they will not change the modus operandi. That's our problem. And the faster we come to terms to understand it, it will be better for us. We can talk from now till the cows come home. It will remain that way for these guys. As long as they can pass the budget, they will go there with anything, pass it, and so be it. That is the story. We have to come to terms. We got to start doing something differently. I see that we lost David.
What?
I'm here. Sorry. Lincoln, while we have you here, tell us what are some of the 3 or 4 big things that the labor movement, in particular the TUC, would like to see in a budget, if all things.
Let me tell you, David, I know we're running out of time, but let me tell you.
Yeah.
Professor Clive Thomas initiated the idea of a cash transfer for households in this country. We want to see it. We want to see it in a structured way. That thing that you see the government doing, walking around, some people walking around with bag of money and sharing out, giving to some homes and pass some other one, must stop. We want a structured way. We want something where each household can receive a check when the year comes, or half year, to say this is your portion. We want that. Okay? We want free education from nursery to university, and we don't want it less than what existed when you took it away in 1993. We don't want it less than that. They're gonna come to tell us we do things in a phased way. But I tell you something. I give the notice already. I'll tell the viewership now. They ain't giving, when they put in whatever they put in, it's not because they like you or they like us. It's because we be fighting the workers and the citizenry, they fighting them all the time for it. So they meet to the point that they recognize that they can run from it because they are part of the constitutional mandate. Okay? We want to see the reform. We want to see this NIS reform. All the decisions, we see all the imperfection right now at the NIS. It was political decisions that caused them. We want to see the NIS pensioners, the minimum wage, the minimum pension must be pegged to the public service minimum wage. The way we want it. Here we want the minimum pension there. We want to see the government take some of this windfall from island gas, and move off the deficit on the NIS. We want to see the issue of NIS. We want to see them address the whole issue of unemployment benefits. We have an economy now with a lot of people in the private sector. A man leave his job, a job where he's been there for 15 years and gone in the private sector to work. And 4 months after, they tell you that you gotta go home. Disturb your entire life. You and your family. If for the next 6 months you're looking for a job, we feel that the NIS, the NIS right now make provision. Right now, it makes provision for unemployment benefits. Let us activate that, put money into that thing. We want to see those type of things, right? We want to see the question of return to collective bargaining. The 655%, yes. People are right to talk about it, but the trade union, if you observe, we ain't talking about 655%. We're talking about one thing: return to collective bargaining. 23(1) of the trade union recognition law says that where a union receives a certificate of recognition from the board, the trade union recognition certification board, where you receive that certificate, the employer is compelled to treat with the union in good faith, negotiate with the union in good faith. These men here who are supposed to be policing the law, making sure that the private sector respect the law, they are the people who are breaking the law every day. Those are 4 areas that we want to see.
Lincoln Lewis,
Being
General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress, waxing lyrics here tonight. And of course, Lincoln Lewis's lyrics are supported by decades of struggle on the part of labor. Regardless of the government, regardless of the political philosophy, regardless of the ideology, labor is constant. Labor is constant. Before there was capital, there was labor. Before there was capital, there was labor. Dr. Adams,
Yeah.
I'm asking you to wear your AFC hat right now.
Right.
What are some of the things the AFC would like to see in a budget if they were invited to contribute to this budget?
Well, the one thing that has been there since going way back years now, since I've been in the AFC, that we've been calling for before it became popular with the PPP, was free education from kindergarten right through university. And it has a basis. That was the mantra that I had, even for a rich country such as the United States. I remember in 2008, I had the privilege of, in 2000, well, it wasn't a privilege to have it when the world economic crisis, but under the Obama administration in 2008, with the economic crisis, all of the senior executives in the Department of Energy, we were required to go to MIT school, Sloan Business School, every 6 months for 2 weeks. And the executives, and then you were there in a special class with all of the executives of the biggest corporations in the world, Exxon, and just name them. And one of the things that and the whole theme and title of the training was, how do we keep America competitive? And the one question we drove at, we would turn to these executives. It was about investments. What attract those companies to countries such as Guyana or even to America? And you would ask them, what are the top 3 things? And you know what every one of them said? Education, education, education. It wasn't infrastructure. That paradigm has gone, where you go read the old textbook, it tells you infrastructure. Jaguar must be reading those old textbooks. And we proved it. We had the data on it because it was between MIT Sloan and Harvard who conducted the course. Then we looked at India. We looked at India and China. And in the 80s, we were predicting that India would have been the next superpower of the world because they had 10 times the infrastructure in the old model of China. And we couldn't figure out how did this happen, that China suddenly, when you look at the education system, India, you know what was the illiteracy rate of India? 39%. 39%. When we looked at China, it was 9%. And then we said, how could that happen? Because India had the best tertiary schools. As a matter of fact, they've got an Indian Institute of Technology as good as MIT. But what had happened, India had focused on tertiary education, whereas China had the middle technician level. So it's all about education, education, education. So we are saying, and education doesn't only mean going to university, it means capacity building, that even R.B. Norton has been talking about. They do not want to hear about capacity building. So it includes all of that. But on top of that, there's several other things, like the wage, which is the same thing that the leader of the opposition has been calling about. You raise the wage, the minimum wage for tax, for taxation to about $150,000. That reaches the ordinary man. You invest in agriculture. Agriculture is the future of this country. It's not oil. Oil is only going to be here for 30 years. We need to invest, take that all money, invest it in agriculture. So when all is gone, we've got a sustainable, people can live, they can eat. And then, of course, in quality education is to get these kids to school. Free transportation, a bus system, a boat system that President Granger had. So those were, but there was a whole lot of a list of priorities that we discussed. But those are some key ones that we think should be highly considered.
Yes, and before I bring in Elson to hear about the plans for the PNC APNU, I just would like to say that from a WPA standpoint, certainly the cash transfer, as Lincoln is saying, is top of the line for us because we feel that a priority of the budget, any budget, should be the lowering and alleviation of poverty. Because we believe if we are able to lower poverty, then we are going to solve a number of other problems. And so for us, therefore, a cash transfer program that is aimed at lower poverty should be a priority in the budget. We also would like to align ourselves with an emphasis on education. The government should spend more on education. For us, we think that there should be a state of emergency in our education system. That is, we start from scratch. And that the emphasis to begin with should be on wiping out illiteracy. I heard you just now when you talked about the differentiation between the literacy rate, because we think that at the center of the crisis of education in our country is the question of literacy. And so we would like an education system that spends a lot of resources in wiping out literacy. And we have had blueprints. Cuba, in a matter of years after the revolution, was able to wipe out literacy. Grenada, within that 4 years of the Grenadian Revolution, they were able to lower illiteracy in that country and make that country almost literate. So we would like to align ourselves with the education thrust, the cash transfer aimed at reducing poverty, and finally, we would like that more resources be given to research. We think that Guyana is in the position to anticipate the transition from fossil fuel to renewables. And we shouldn't wait because we have the capacity here for renewables. And the government should begin to put money into research. Now, that will fly against Jack Deo's philosophy. But
you got to do too much studies. That's too much studies, boy.
But we think any budget in Guyana now, while we are getting this windfall, is both to take advantage of the windfall, but to begin to prepare ourselves for when fossil fuel will go on. There are other things, but I just wanted, on behalf of the WPA, to emphasize those three things. Elson Lowe, what priorities would the APNU/PNC have for a budget?
Well, one of the things that I think we've been kind of saying without saying is that the PPP has a culture of anti-intellectualism. They don't want to think, they don't like people who think, they don't want to encourage people to study and to be able to think critically. To that end, we have completely the opposite position. And I think you've kind of echoed some of what I would say in terms of the focus on the University of Guyana, the focus on resourcing it so that they can conduct research, pay lecturers as they should be paid, make it free and free without conditions, such as having to work in order for it to be free and so on and so forth. Removing of student loans, the student debt that exists there is also vital. But really, we believe that education is a much larger task because we've got a country with not the highest rates of education by many metrics. To that end, we've talked about $50,000 per student, 50 for 50, for 50,000 students, $50,000 for 50,000 students every month, which is a cash transfer, but it is for students number one, to give them some assistance, as education has its expenses, but also to encourage people to get skills training, to encourage people to go to the University of Guyana, to encourage people to go back to the University of Guyana, and really to help us to build up skills across our economy so that we can get the jobs that come from the oil industry, but also so that our companies across the board can become innovative, can be more innovative, and can grow their revenues and grow the economy. Guyana, according to the IDB, has one of the lowest levels of adoption of technology and use of technology. And of course, if you have a low level of education, it's going to be difficult for you to adopt new technologies. That is holding our economy back. And so for us, we don't see the University of Guyana as a political gimmick, which is what the PVP, I believe, sees the university as. We see it as critical to the development of the country. So that is one core pillar, I would say, of what we want to see from this budget. Another one, which Dr. Adams touched on, is the question of raising the tax threshold to $150,000. We believe that any low and middle income people should not be paying tax, and we will continue to speak about the increasing of that tax threshold substantially. One of the things that I want to draw people's attention to is that Guyana this year, on if you adjust for prices on a per capita basis, has a GDP per person that is higher than every single country except for 10. I mean, we're number 10 on the list. To me, that indicates that people need to see tangible improvements in the standard of living. Raising that tax threshold will have an immediate benefit to people, but also that will encourage additional people to seek jobs and to work, because of course you're being paid more for the same labor. So that is one thing that we also believe is very much vital. But in addition to that, we started this program talking about the cost of living, and we must recognize that we are facing a crisis in the cost of living that is as severe as it has been for 40 years. I think that there must be significant measures in this budget, not a measly 5 billion tucked away somewhere, not even 1%, but significant measures to bring down price levels, to bring inflation to the spiraling inflation down, and to ensure that Guyanese are benefiting. There's no point in Guyanese, working all of these hours, earning a wage, if the wage is being eaten away non-stop. There's no point in giving out a cash grant if the inflation rate is going to be eating out the value of that cash grant. We must also deal with that problem. And as a result, that must be a key pillar of the budget going forward. One other thing that we believe must be pointed out, and which again we've touched on, but which is vital, is the question of funding small businesses and funding small agricultural enterprises. They need to be able to, first of all, be able to open businesses, but second of all, be able to purchase equipment, even if that is a tractor, whether that is other forms of equipment that you need to carry out small scale manufacturing as a small business. That is also going to be a driver of jobs, a way of expanding the non-oil economy, and a way of growing our overall tax base. We should not be treating small businesses as an afterthought. It seems to me that that's the way the government looks at small businesses, and the allocations for the Small Business Bureau and similar the Small Business Bureau have not kept up with the sharp increase in the size of the budget, which is equivalent to 5 years worth of a budget. So those are just a few of the areas. Of course, I could talk here all night long.
Right.
But really, when we look at the direction of travel that the country needs to go on, a lot of these initiatives are geared around productivity, are geared around encouraging, are geared around increasing our labor force participation. But we have also at the back of our mind that everything that we do can also help to decrease the poverty rate and to lower the cost of living. And so we believe that with policy, there's more than enough money. You're going to see another huge budget. You can accomplish these objectives. It is only through bad policy that you're seeing all of this spending, and again, another year of disappointment.
And of course, Elson, Vincent, and Lincoln, we have seen in the past where the PPP has used the budget to push its a domination agenda. Elson, you were very vocal, I think, last year in pointing out the difference in monies allocated to the various regions.
Yeah.
But regions which were PPP strongholds, they raised, and regions which were not their strongholds, they lowered the money that through the regions. So is that something that you'll be looking at this year? How the PPP uses the budget to advance its racial
Absolutely.
dignity agenda?
Absolutely. That is one core area. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention public servants need to be able to get a substantial salary increase to benefit from all of this growth in revenue. One other thing that came to my mind that we must talk about, which sometimes we don't. There needs to be money in this budget for governance reform and for proper monitoring of the oil industry, in particular auditing, and of course we've got the arbitration case coming up over the recovery of that $240 million that's in dispute. We need to see the government take seriously that governing is something that you have to dedicate resources to. And sadly, I'm waiting to see, but I'm not optimistic that in this budget you're going to see monies allocated to properly run the oil industry and to properly govern.
Elson Lowe here. And of course, one thing that I forgot to mention that we in the WPA feel that should be very much part of any budget in 2024, and that is monies and other resources to improve the efficiency of our armed forces. In a time in which we are being threatened by Venezuela, we cannot have a budget which does not have as one of its primary objectives resources allocating for the proper defense of our territorial integrity. And I'm sure neither the AFC nor the APNU nor organized labor would disagree with that emphasis. As we have been speaking here tonight, I think I will keep this Friday forum where I bring you guys back, to monitor the budget process as it unfolds. So next week, Friday, we're going to come back to continue this discussion. By then, the budget would have been read. You would have had a chance to peruse it, and we will continue that discussion. But of course, I can't let you all go without some parting thoughts. Lincoln, Vincent, and then Elson. Mr. Lewis?
I am here.
You seem to be having some problem.
He's gone.
Vince?
Yes, and since Elson raised it, again, we need to make a comparison when we bring up these issues. We need to remind the people once again that, when Jagdeo even tried to blame and cut down the government because the government, the past government coalition for raising tuition at UG. These people have the nerve. It was the PNC under Barnum that introduced free education that you and I don't know about the Elson, but you and I benefit from Dr. Hines, and that gave us the foundation to even go abroad and continue. And it was the PPP that abolished free education. So to come up and say that the coalition government increased fees, it's just absolute nonsense. But here's the other thing that Elson brought up that I have to bring up in terms of monitoring the oil industry, which is very, very important, because now we're getting robbed blindly. When I was at EPA, because of course what I was used to here, I went to the World Bank, and this is in the middle of COVID in 2019, got $1 million from the World Bank to develop a petroleum unit within the EPA, because there's not a single person in the EPA that had an hour training in petroleum except for myself. So we had no capacity. We came up with an organization chart with position description, with a 36-member petroleum unit for the EPA, and we were going to go staff it in 2020. Of course, we know what happened in 2020. There wasn't any budget, and you were required. These were some high-powered petroleum engineers with at least 5 to 10 years experience to be on the FPSOs 24/7. So you couldn't fool them. Meters and everything that they were seeing how everything is run and what exactly is going on. When I left, they just canned it. And when and even they even denied that the report that ever existed until, of course, the front cover of the report somehow showed up on the front page of the newspaper. Because when I was talking about it, they said that I was dreaming this stuff up. That's what they were saying. Well, of course, we made certain that the front cover, and it says big World Bank, EPA, and it had the organization chart and everything. And then they started backpedaling and said, well, they didn't know about it, and they're implementing. Because Exxon did not want it, they backed off. So we've got to let people know it's not something that we're thinking about doing, because that's what Jack Deere is saying all the time, that all we do is think about stuff. This is stuff that we put in place that he is tearing down. Free education and on-site monitoring of the oil industry. He has torn those down. So we need to make people understand that. It's not that we're now thinking about it.
Lincoln, your closing thoughts?
I have no big expectation come Monday. I believe that the budget, as described by all of us here, will be the same as described by us. It's like playing cricket with a football. We know what we're going to get. We don't see the ball. We see the ball big right now. We know what we're going to get even before it's being delivered. These guys will not give. They will not give in to anything that can empower the masses in this country. You talk about oil and gas. Oil and gas, as somebody put it like this, that it is here for a few people in Guyana to make money, and the rest must grovel at the table. That is what is taking place.
Yes.
Come Monday, come Tuesday, come Wednesday, and next week Friday, as you said, you're going to invite us back. We will have a better opportunity to validate what will be transpiring. Thank you.
Let's quickly, David, and I just want to piggyback on something that my good friend Lincoln said, and which I mentioned that we discussed last night as a matter of fact in our AFC meeting. And I asked a question. I said, I mean, what is this going to Parliament and presenting a budget? What does it mean? What value does it add? Like Lincoln said, they don't care. They're going to come there. They're going to do the budget presentation. We're going to get up and give our political speech. And when it's over, it doesn't matter what we say. It's the same budget that they want. What value? So this here is just about politics. So that's the frustrating part of this entire budget process. And you and I know, Dr. Hines, even in the United States, the minority party right now, it's shutting, they can't pass budgets unless you get some kind of consensus between the two parties, or else there is no budget. We do not have that type of a system or process to ensure that there's meaningful participation, because this process here does not result in any meaningful participation. So that's one of my biggest frustrations.
Elson?
Before we close out, before Elson come in, let me point out to you. Dr. Hines, I've been talking some time now that we need to change the law, that we must have no budget passed by simple majority. We must have the law in such a way that unless we have approximately 60% of the people of the representation in Parliament voting for it, it should not pass. That will force the actors in Parliament to work across the aisle to get consensus. A man must be able to, as a representative, must go there and be able to argue for something for his constituency. Now you saying that I will determine what you get. We have to stop it, man. We have to work differently. And if there is one thing that needs to be changed, is that appropriation bill being passed by simple majority.
By
Totally agree.
supermajority.
Totally agree, Clinton.
Simple majority.
Totally
It currently being passed by simple majority. We want a
Yes,
super majority.
supermajority. Elson Law?
Yeah.
totally.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll lapse into some discussions on constitutional reform. I'm all for constitutional reform. I think we need to strengthen our institutions in Guyana, have a long discussion on strengthening them. And that is really going to be a pillar, again, of good governance. But, as Dr. Hines will note, I try to, again, remind people of the context around what is going on. Guyana, again, this year, 10th richest country per capita when you adjust for prices. A budget last year, including the supplementals, that is as big as 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014 spending combined. Folks, I think it is clear. If the government, with all of that spending, isn't focused on the average Guyanese, they're never going to be focused on the average Guyanese. And so this budget, I think the reason that many people, myself of course, but many people are not optimistic, is because they've already seen what the PPP's priorities are. And so, we expect a large budget again, but this budget must deliver the standards of living, or a movement towards the standard of living that Guyanese really should expect. And failing it, Guyanese should, in all honesty, think to themselves, we got to look for an alternative government come 2025.
Yes. Gentlemen, thank you all so much for kicking off this discussion in this budget season. I know from the comments that have been coming through that we have touched some nerves. And it's always good to discuss these issues, economic issues, in really a public way, because people always think economics is a hard thing to talk about in the open space. Certainly, we have put that lie to rest tonight. I want to thank you all so much for a lively and informative discussion.
One quick closure.
Yes.
1 second. Because I know they're gonna, they start peddling this $30, this $30,000 GDP. It doesn't mean a darn thing if half of the population, I think it's 45 or 48% of the population, is living on $4.50 per day. Here you have $4.50 per day, but the GDP is
30,000.
It started. That's about 16 times difference. So you know that you have the super rich because everything is averaging, and you have the super poor. So this 30,000 GDP per capita is meaningless.
And even Jack Dio, in a moment of half truth, said the GDP per capita is nominal. Remember him?
Yes.
You obviously, Doc, you listening? You heard him use that term.
Absolutely. And then he got tangled up in trying to explain what it is.
I said, boy, we got sent the boy back to teachers training college to learn to preach. he had a hell of a time explaining that. And the journalists were there. God bless them. But I think just as we feel that the opposition parliamentarians should be a bit more, I think our media really should become a little bit more combative.
Totally agree.
Yeah, because that man gets away with murder.
Totally agree.
It's as if they go to church and listen to him, and then they say amen.
Yep.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you much, guys. Thank you all much. And thank you, the audience, for staying with us. Without you, there is no show. No show. And look how many of you, hundreds of you, have stayed until the very end, and look, we have gone over. Have yourselves a good weekend. Have a little drink. Have a little whatever you do. Relax. That relaxes you. We have to remember, at the end of the day, we are human beings. We are not just political beings. We are human beings first. Thank you all so much. And we will be back here on Monday. It's budget day on Monday, and we will be here with Politics 101 again on Monday. See you all then.